that we're going to have families driving children. We're also going to have older children riding their bikes. And so I'm concerned, and I want you folks to think very seriously about this. How many children do you know that will take a 90-degree turn? Huh? They come here, they stop, they're going to take a 90-degree turn to turn here? No, what they're going to do is, whichever way they're coming, they're going to take advantage of the traffic. I'm concerned about that. So if you're planning and even thinking about, David, having a crosswalk there, I would say that that crosswalk should not be put in there unless you have a stop sign here, a stop sign here, and a stop sign there. That controls traffic. Eventually we're going to need this, because when St. Joseph's opens up their new school, we're going to have that additional traffic problem. You may or may not know that on Park Lane, there was an entry into the property of Sacred Heart, and that was a sacred cow. You couldn't drive in there for love or money. Now, because of the activities and the way that they're changing their campus, they're allowing that as an entryway. So you've got to consider more than just what's going on here. Also, I believe the school spent some $25,000 on Alejandra putting in a lighted street setup. And if you're ever there watching the children, you'll very seldom ever see them going across that crosswalk, but they're walking everywhere else to go across to the football field or the baseball field. And David, I know that you know that. I love you as a friend, but we've got a serious problem here, and I think more consideration should be given to this issue before something definite is set for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. My name is Maureen Hogan. I am the safety liaison for Sacred Heart Schools Lower and Middle Parent Board. And Rich Dioli, the director of the schools, has asked me to read this letter in his absence to members of the committee.
Could you speak up?
Sorry,
as possible? Thank you.
Dear Atherton Transportation Committee members, Sacred Heart Schools Atherton endorses and supports the idea of a crosswalk at the intersection of Emily Avenue and McBain Avenue. During peak arrival and dismissal times for both Menlo School and the Sacred Heart Schools, the amount of vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic, excuse me if I word I use often, intermingling is substantial and oftentimes dangerous. The joint efforts of both schools currently taking place has already made a positive impact on the traffic awareness along Valparaiso Avenue. We believe installing a crosswalk and adding a crossing guard will only add to the safety of students and help both schools accomplish their goals of encouraging and increasing pedestrian and bike transportation within their student body. We ask the Transportation Committee to decide favorably on this request, and I would like to submit this letter. And it's signed by Rich Dioli, our directors of schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
I didn't realize until you just read the letter that you were willing to hire a crossing guard. That makes a huge difference. I think to Lou's point as well, we have recently hired crossing guards at Encinal, and they are teaching the children that the crosswalk is the only place you can cross. And so is that something that St. Joe's and Menlo have agreed on, or are you guys,
That is something that I would think we have to consider.
This is a little bit of a surprise to me, but
it's a great idea.
Well, yes, it is a good idea. It's part of what Lou, as I was listening to Lou, he's exactly right. The problem that exists right now is the kids coming down Park and coming across are looking, they're opportunists. They're looking for a place to dart across the street. You know, it doesn't entirely shake out in age groups. It's not that the little ones always dart and the older ones are smarter about this. Some of the older ones think that they're invincible, so they dart as well. But a crosswalk, a mechanism across there, gives us sort of a teaching opportunity. It allows us to talk to the kids. That's a lot of what Kevin's job is about. We were party to a grant application for safe routes to school. Unfortunately, it was not granted. So we're trying to do this on our own. And from my way of thinking is to try to educate the kids on a safe way to get across the street. They're not all going to stop, get off their bikes and push them, but we can be there, we can teach them, we can have classes and assemblies on campus on the proper way, not just here, but it's all throughout their whole route. But if we don't provide them basically a sidewalk across the street, a route to do that, I think we're missing part of the equation, and that's what we're asking for. We also are very sensitive to sort of the quality of life of our neighbors. We didn't request a flashing light or the in-ground flashing lights because I'm not sure that Charles, who lives in the Mee house, really wants to see a blinking light out in front of his house. And why start there? Let's not go to that extreme to begin with, in the hopes that by providing this route and providing education, we'll never need that. I have to leave it to the public works folks who do this professionally to know whether a painted crosswalk is all you need. That's great. If it, you know, we're talking about this yield sign on the ground earlier. If that's all you need and you don't need signs, we're fine. If they work together and they don't work one without the other, that's for you to decide, I guess. We're just looking for a organized, safe way for the kids to cross the street, so we can point them to that and say, that's what you do. Now, you know, we could be successful enough where it really warrants us hiring a crossing guard. We use crossing guards on Valparaiso, we use them in a number of different places. So I'm not ruling that out at all. And if it warrants it, I can't commit to it, but I can commit to trying to convince the school that we need to do that. And a lot of it has to do with how many kids are actually going to have it. There's only 25 kids. You know, you might not need it. If we get wildly successful and it gets a little more than that, maybe we do it.
Through the chair, I'd like to ask David. David, have you had any conversation with St. Joseph's with this type of a problem with them?
I'm not sure exactly, but you know, we've been working with St. Joseph's Sacred Heart, trying to, because it's like the bike traffic comes and then part of it stops at Sacred Heart and part of it keeps going on to our school. So they're just as interested in this whole system as we are. But this piece is largely for us because the Sacred Heart kids and St. Joe's kids are already at school. If they've come from this direction, they're already at their destination. It's just our kids that are doing this last leg. I'm not sure that answers your question.
Well, I'm concerned. I know Sandy very well there.
Lou, could I ask you to come up to the microphone and ask your question? So I'm sorry, so it's on the tape and we have a record of it. Although this is all being taped, I want the town to have a record too.
Lou Caponis, McBain Avenue. David, I'm concerned about this part, and that is the enlargement of most of the schools. And you're concerned about getting your people there safely, and I am too. St. Joseph's and Sacred Heart must have the same feeling. So my question is, have they put any input to you regarding this particular action?
Yeah, we have a joint committee that's working on the entire problem. So when we talk about these things, they're sitting at the table hearing it. But I have to say, it is for us because it's just beyond their campus, but they're very much aware of this.
Well, yeah, but they would have to come either Valparaiso or Alejandra to get into the new area here on Park Lane or however they open up this area. So if they're going to have cyclists, they're going to have the same problem that you have. And that's why I'm concerned how deeply you've gone into it with them.
Well, you can speak to the entrances to Sacred Heart and St. Joe's better than I can, but I understand they're off Park Avenue. Is that, I'm really out of my depth on this one.
You know,
Well, you can see my concerns.
yes, you know what I have to say? Just listening to all of you, my feeling is you need to all get together with the residents and talk this out. I mean, I'm listening to, you don't know about the crossing guard, but someone suggests a crossing guard, and yes, that might resolve some of Lou's problems, but Mr. Goldstein is saying you need more information, and it sounds like you do need more information, and you're talking between the schools, but you're not talking with the residents, and I think we need some answers, but you haven't spoken to some of the residents, so I don't know how the rest of you feel, but that's the sense I'm getting just listening to this.
Yeah, the first I've heard of this was Friday when I got my binders. And did you notify the many neighbors in the area of McBain? I know these people came. I don't know how you people found out it was on the agenda, because I just found out Friday. Did you, Ms. David, did you give them any notification to people in the area by, that this was going to be brought up?
Not formally.
Not within so many feet? I mean, usually they within so many feet, they for an item, especially this type, they would notify the neighbors.
They're 500 feet.
500 feet, yeah.
I've never appeared at the traffic committee, so I wasn't sure what their rules were.
I don't know that it's a rule for the traffic committee. Normally, when there's a change to a residence or something like that, there's a 500 rule. I don't know what applies in a case like this. I'm not saying it does or it doesn't.
Now, the person that where we have that crosswalk drawn, Mr. Marsala is on the left.
Right.
Did you talk to the person, that property, where that crosswalk is, on the right, on the south side? So in other words, these people are here because they found out about this some way, osmosis or something, or Marsala still has a pipeline out of this desk.
What about the rest of the committee members?
I guess I'm a little baffled because a crosswalk seems like a pretty innocuous thing to me, and if it would help safety and help train kids to be a little more responsible, that seems like a good thing to me. And I'm having trouble understanding the residents' concern. I get a little bit of a feeling that they feel the crosswalk is like the camel's nose under the tent somehow, that that's going to create all kinds of additional problems. I would be interested in having a Public Works look at it. You know, somebody suggested a three-way stop. Well, at what point would that be? Mike shaking his head. So,
Well, in all that, you just don't go out and willy-nilly put stop signs up. And, you know, because what we're talking about here is a lot of traffic. And in the mornings, you want to get people, you want to allow them to efficiently drop off the kids and go on to wherever else they're going. The other thing about stop signs is that if they're not placed properly, that is where you will hear from the residents. Because nothing worse than having a bunch of cars stop and start and stop and start and stop and start in front of your house. And so, you know, before, as your staff, we wouldn't be recommending, stop signs unless it met certain warrants. Because there's issues if you don't do it that way. So, but yeah, at this point, if directed by this committee, what we would do and what our recommendation is for us to go out and do a pedestrian count to see, again, how many kids, where they're crossing. And based on that, we would come back to City Council at your December meeting with a recommendation of putting in the sidewalk with a specific location, or possibly we don't believe a sidewalk is warranted at this point because there just isn't that many pedestrians crossing.
Crosswalk.
You mean crosswalk. I would urge you to, and maybe this is already factored into your algorithm here, but we have a number of parents who say, I won't let my child ride a bike until there's a safe way to get to school. And I understand that. I've got a 10-year-old daughter. I understand that. So the counts that you might get today, would be, from our perspective, improved. There would be more kids if there were a more organized way to get there. So if the sort of proof test is what's happening today, it might not warrant, in your mind, or pass the warrant, or whatever your test is. But we certainly hope that if we had a better route, that more people would do it. And I think that's just sort of intuitive. And don't do it on a rainy day because nobody will be there.
I mean, it seems like a perfectly sane idea, but what concerns me is people in the area seem not to have had an opportunity to express their concerns about this and had input.
Kathy, I think all three of us would like to comment, having heard more comments. So.
I'll give you each a quick minute each. What's that?
Thank you. Charles Masala, 33 Emily. I am, Michael, your points about the stop sign were my concerns as well, because I believe during the non-8 to 3 hours, or 8 to 8:15 and 3 to 3:30, you have all the stopping and going when you don't have the crosswalk needed. So I would prefer the solution. I think Lou's got a good point there, that people are going to find the most opportune place to cross, and a crossing guard, perhaps for that half hour each morning and afternoon, is all that's needed, because otherwise I just see a mess happening here where everyone queues up at this stop sign at odd hours where there's really no need to use the crosswalk, and makes a problem for getting traffic to Montessori, getting out, and the drop-off rates that are further down here. Likewise, coming out here, I think that could be another issue as people are leaving. And when Sacred Heart designed their traffic flow or St. Joe's did, for moving things to park, I think it probably interferes with that concept as well, of how they were going to get cars out. So before we change this part, hopefully there'd be a lot of weighing of the impact of putting a stop sign, especially here. Because I just see this backing up here in a big way as I watch the cars in the mornings leave to get to here to make the
I'm
drop.
sorry, Charles, to interrupt. Wasn't it you who suggested the 3 stop signs?
No.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
Charles.
go ahead.
Next, please. Thank you.
Well, I guess I just have to comment about this, the elephant under the tent comment that was made. It's the same issue that you have on Middlefield and James and all of that you were discussing earlier. Everything that's done here, unfortunately, has an impact on traffic. And it has an impact on the traffic of the neighbors, of people in the neighborhood. So it's not that we are trying to kill kids, or we need to do that. And, you know, I think that a crosswalk probably does make some sense if it's done well. And we're not talking, but I just think that more discussion is warranted with the neighbors. And I understand that we've had a lot of these discussions going on for months. I don't know that this is an issue that needs to be something that's delved into for years, but I think that all of those ramifications are apt, and the whole traffic situation is something that needs to be brought up in this regard, not just the specific issue. I'm sorry about that, but I think it's true.
Thank you.
Lou Paponis, McBain Avenue. I want to assure David and Kevin that I am concerned about the children and their safety, and I want everything to happen. I spent 51.5 years as a licensed funeral director and an embalmer, and I'll tell you the most heartbreaking thing was to see some youngster come in that was killed by an automobile. I don't know how to express it. It affects me to this day. So I want to see the safety of these children. But Larry, to answer your question, why am I concerned? McBain Avenue used to go all the way through between the two campuses, right to El Camino Real. They cut us off. But in the meantime, this street is claimed to be owned by Sacred Heart. They locked us in. I don't want any more things to happen to McBain Avenue. in traffic or anything else that will prevent me from having the right of way and be able to drive on the streets. That's my concern. It isn't the safety of the children. I love the children. But I want things to be right for the rest of us that either reside on Emily, reside on McBain, reside on Howard Way, which is also a cul-de-sac off of McBain Avenue. Thank you.
Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to mention, like Lou did, if you look at that drawing, McBain Avenue is a cul-de-sac. The people that live on McBain have to come west towards this crosswalk. You can't go exit the street going east. Everybody that lives on that street, all the homeowners, have to come through and will pass this, and they all should have an interest in this item.
Yes. Kevin, do you have a recommendation for us?
I'd like to say one more last thing before I submit the recommendation. We all agree that we want to make sure that McBain neighbors are taken into consideration, and really we understand the concerns they bring up, and especially getting out as a thoroughfare, getting out to Valparaiso and the rest of the community. The students will cross because that's their access point to the campus. We are simply trying to make it as consistent and familiar as possible, and that's a crosswalk, not a stop sign, because that takes a lot more engineering and more thought. A crosswalk simply, as David said, channels the students to one understood mechanism for getting across the street. And we had a bike safety week in September where one of the officers, Officer Joe, actually came to campus and explained that the students could be cited if they did not get off their bikes and walk across. So our students are very aware, very educated about this. They know what to do. And I think this is and my recommendation is to get the process started to install this crosswalk so that the neighbors understand what will be happening with the bikers, so it's consistent, and we can all move forward and make this intersection safer.
Could I ask you,
Sure.
given our situation here and the fact that we respect dearly all that Menlo School has done over the years to try and work with the town and with the community, you've heard the concern of the community, and clearly not all the community that might be concerned about it has been told what might happen. So there might very well be additional concerns, and I believe some of us here are equally concerned about some questions that need to be answered, not about the fact that a crosswalk might be helpful. What might you be able to offer us in terms of allaying some of these concerns in the form of some greater outreach, so that people can be heard and you can assist them in discussing these issues?
I think Mike's recommendation is probably apt for that, because he suggested going through the process of the public works, taking into account various, how many are going to cross. They really do the due diligence before making a recommendation to the city council. And so we would like to see the item brought up at the December 6th meeting.
That isn't going to be the same sort of outreach. That's going to be a city council meeting. And it's not, that unfortunately is not going to be the same sort of outreach where you're going to have an opportunity to speak with the neighbors.
I think it will give us time to do that. And David McAdoo has more experience than I do working with the neighbors, so I'd like to have him finish.
We actually have a long history of meeting with the neighbors. And I've heard some things here this evening that make me wonder what those neighbor meetings could actually accomplish, what we can do. But if the process moves forward better by having us have those meetings, we can certainly do that. We can invite the neighbors and come in. have them come in or get together and talk out the issues. One of the major concerns I heard was, and I do understand, I've worked with these folks for 11 years now, and I understand the issues, I think, but like Ed, your issues about all of Elena, I can't address that. I can't address in a neighborhood meeting the cumulative impact of what a crosswalk would do. And I think I understand. The issue that you're concerned about is these little sort of incursions and additions add up to a total of, from Alejandra to Valparaiso, you have an effect on that whole street of Emily. I don't know how to gauge it. We would need help from, I guess, Public Works. I'm kind of high-centered on this one.
Quite frankly, I don't think the issue is the crosswalk. I mean, it's what we're talking about tonight, but what, I'm just wondering if the issue really isn't, growing traffic as a result of growing school population and the impact it has on those neighborhood streets. It's not the crosswalk. The crosswalk isn't going to, create any other, in my opinion, neighborhood impact. It's just a singular safety device.
I would agree with you on that, but that doesn't allay Ed's frustrations. And
I think that you have to have a process like you've had, where more people are notified about this. That's all I'm saying, because it does impact all of us who live on McBain. Now, this may be, which I was trying to say, I don't think this is a major impact thing, like, increasing your enrollment. Or whatever that one was, but I think that it's something you need to bring to the attention of all of us on McBain, and I wouldn't have known about this if Lou had told me. So, because of the history we have with the schools and the issue that we have with the institutions, we're sensitive. And so, everything that happens brings out the sensitivity.
Would the most appropriate thing then be for us to just withdraw this until we have the meeting, or have the meeting in anticipation of a December 6th council meeting?
I feel that we could tentatively say that while we're in favor of a crosswalk for the safety of the students, that we would like to have our staff prepare a staff report looking at the issue from the perspective of the need for a crosswalk and what it would look like and where it should be located after you have a meeting with the parents where hopefully Mike can attend and answer any questions and include any of his observations in a staff report and recommendation at the December council meeting. Does that sound like it makes sense?
Well, I think that's helpful. I think that I can't speak for everyone. I think that part of what Public Works should do, I think you're right. The issue is not just the crosswalk, it's the whole issue of that that corridor there. But, I'd like to see what you come up with, what Public Works comes up, I guess, before I would say that you should definitively
What kind of a statistic?
I don't think we're definitively saying anything. I think we're just saying, in theory, it makes sense from a safety perspective, but we need to see a staff report after meeting with Sacred Heart, after meeting with Menlo School and the parents, having a discussion, looking at it from a Public Works standpoint with regard to crosswalks, and delivering a council report with regard to.
I'm afraid so.
Yes.
And I understand that the kids are riding bikes now, and this is an immediate issue for the school. I understand, but I'm afraid so.
And that's fine. The way this really started with us, and I think the way the crossing guard got mixed into it was, we all, as Kevin says, we all went out there, and Norm Cole was out there, and Tony LaPola, the dean of students, and we were kind of looking, going, oh boy, this is not good. And our first reaction was, well, let's put a crossing guard here and see if we can sort this out. And we don't believe we're legally allowed to do that. We can't have our private crossing guard stop traffic on a public street if it's not already designated to be stoppable. So
But that isn't a public street, according to someone said that
No.
it belongs to Sacred Heart or something.
No,
That's what I said, okay.
What that would do is, if you can resolve it all, you don't have to come back to us. You can work it out amongst yourselves.
all right,
Okay.
we're happy for any process.
Okay?
I thought this was really,
We had hoped so too.
David, now you have the drawings and the photos and everything. How long have you people been working on this crosswalk approximately? I mean, the idea.
yeah, 1 or 2 months. I mean, this has come up since
Recently,
we
1 or 2
started
months.
school. Yeah.
And you made no attempt during this 1 or 2 months to notify the people in the area, or even notify us?
No. Well, other than getting them on the agenda.
Right. But you had no idea of there's also another street in there, I understand, Howard, right? There's another large group of neighbors and homeowners there. But you haven't really, you worked on it 2 months, but you haven't notified the people in the area. Didn't think that was necessary, or what?
Frankly, no.
What do the rest of the committee members think about my suggestion?
I think your suggestion is a good one. Get the process started. I'm in favor of the crosswalk, but I think the neighbors do have sensitivity to this issue. And if you can inform these people as much as you can, I think that will help you
Okay,
and help the children.
great.
And
Happy to do
I
that.
think having a staff report and a more specific proposal, so people can see, here's what it'll look like, here's what it'll be, then they know what's being planned. Right now, there's uncertainty.
Anyone else? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that this committee, while in favor of the idea of a crosswalk from the perspective of the safety of the students, is not taking any specific action on the matter at this time, but for the recommendation that there be a community meeting of some kind held by the school with our Mike present, at which time he would be there to explain what the process will be with regard to the warrants and what a crosswalk might look like. And you will then conduct the study and prepare a report for council to be presented at the December meeting, giving the results not only of the community meeting and what has been said and resolved, hopefully, but also the results of your study with regard to the crosswalk itself, from the perspective of what it should look like and where it should be located. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And is that satisfactory, I hope, to the parties involved? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Could someone please tell Councilmember Lewis that with our apologies, she can now return. I'm sorry. I'll apologize now.
Kathy, could I ask for
David?
if we go back to item 6.2, we never mentioned restated the motion. I'd kind of like to know what it was.
The motion is that we go ahead for 3 months, have 3 months review of each 2 years old at James and what? Sorry, Elizabeth.
You know, it was cold out there, but the interesting thing is that the loudspeaker was out there, so I heard every word, except then Teresa put me into the little conference room, and I turned on the little space heater, so my legs are toasty warm now.
Oh, good.
That was nice of Teresa.
Wasn't that nice of Teresa?
Nice girl.
Such a nice girl. It's like 40 degrees out there, I'm going, well.
She can solve problems, that Teresa.
Good. All right, in order not to keep people any later than we have to, could we move on to the police and traffic report, please?
Sure, let's do September's first. For September, we received 8 traffic complaints. Each complaint is listed with the amount of time spent in the area and the results. For September, we had 2 driving under the influence arrests, and one of these arrests resulted from a traffic collision. No truck stop details were performed. The traffic officer worked 152.5 hours out of 184 scheduled hours of traffic enforcement, traffic program maintenance, and patrol shift coverage. We had 12 traffic collisions which occurred. Two of those collisions involved injuries. There were no hit and run collisions, and one collision was caused by a driver who was driving under the influence of alcohol. For September 2011, we had a total of 613 traffic stops compared to 486 for September of 2010. Moving on to October.
Before you go to October, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Under item number 5, what were the 3 additional contacts that were made at Menlo Atherton and Oak Grove?
I do not know because they were not put into the computer system. So I don't know if they were citations, warnings, radar sites. I don't know what those were.
Okay, in the future, could we have clarification when that kind of thing is put in a report?
Sure.
Thanks.
Moving on to October, we have 2 traffic complaints. Those are listed with the total amount of time spent and the number of contacts. We had 9 arrests made for driving under the influence of alcohol, and again, one of the arrests was from a traffic collision. No truck stop details were performed. Traffic officer Marks worked 166 hours out of 172 scheduled hours. We had 14 traffic collisions, 7 involved injuries, 3 were hit and runs, and 1 was caused by a driver who was driving under the influence. We had 635 traffic contacts for October of 2011 compared to 370 for October of 2010.
Questions from members of the committee? Comments?
I just have a question on Watkins Avenue, the lighted speeding sign. It's been out for a long time.
That actually, as far as I know, has been reported to Public Works. Public Works is now taking care of those for us.
Yeah.
So they should be fixing that as soon as possible. I don't know what the problem is with that one.
I called in the service call, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just left a message because nobody answered.
Anyone else?